Welcome to the Nerd Party.
Hi, this is Nick Anastasiou, story editor on Star Wars The Clone Wars and Star Wars Bad Batch. And you are listening to Aggressive Negotiations.
Well, hello and welcome to Aggressive Negotiations, a Star Wars podcast that just loves talking about all the things that you love hearing about because we're just fans just like you. And I am Jedi Master Matthew Rushing, and with me, as he is every single week, the one, the only Jedi Master, John Mills. John, how are you doing tonight?
You know what? I think that we're all in the Star Wars community still in a state of mourning, if you will. Every time somebody journeys on from this mortal coil, there's always a little bit of a sting to that. And those of us who are old enough to have grown up with certain actors and actresses and voices, it's something that I think is very much on our mind.
No, I'm right there with you. I think everybody, like you said, is in that place. So we are going to discuss the man, the myth, and I do actually mean the legend that is James Earl Jones. Before we do that, thank you so much for joining us and listening to us. We do really appreciate it. Follow us all over social media, and of course, reviews, yada, yada, yada. I had a question for you, just as we think about James and his impact and his legacy. Was Star Wars the first movie where you ran into this just incredible man?
Yeah. Yes. I was 3 the first time I saw Star Wars, so I promise you it's the first time I ever heard James Earl Jones's voice. And it's what's weird about it, and this is a hard thing to convey, is because, somebody who's younger than me can say the same thing. I can't imagine a time where I didn't hear James Earl Jones's voice.
Yeah.
Like, it's his voice and his delivery, everything, and not just in Star Wars, but his other roles, is as familiar to me as my own family's voices. It's really bizarre, right? Because, but especially being Darth Vader's voice. I mean, it's like, the thing I always struggled with throughout his very illustrious career is, did it always take you a second to move past hearing Darth Vader when he spoke? Let's put it this way. The first time you encountered James Earl Jones in a non-Darth Vader role, did you take an extra second to realize it was him? Or was there something about the voice that nabbed you immediately?
Man, that is a good question because, like you, my first time to run into him was, of course, in Star Wars, and then seeing, if you've listened to the show long enough, you know that I watched all 3. I was a VHS kid, and so became very familiar with his voice in the realm of Darth Vader, and. Yet, I think, honestly, that the next time that I saw him in something was actually The Hunt for October, when he played Admiral Greer. And immediately I was like, that's Darth Vader. That's so what? And he's just such a different type of person, obviously, in that role. And, and then I would go back and see things like Field of Dreams and I think the beauty about him and the thing that I really loved about James Earl Jones is that I remember learning that this man who was known for his voice had a stutter as a child. It was just an incredibly interesting and neat story to hear that somebody had overcome something and legitimately became known for the thing that gave him the most problems as a young child, which, it's just an inspiring thing.
It is. And when you think about the fact that you cannot remove from the conversation that James Earl Jones, as a black man, had racial things that he had to deal with in his life as well. And so to be a black man in America who also had a speech difficulty to overcome, to then still become one of the most respected voices in performance, that is a hell of a thing, man. Like it is hard to overstate exactly what an indelible cultural mark he made, while at the same time overcoming obstacles
Yeah.
going along there. When you think of actors and actresses who are sort of born into it like royalty, and they inherit their careers and everything, I would argue that I wind up respecting somebody like James Earl Jones a great deal because he didn't have that leg up in any sense. And even if he were never Darth Vader, he still had an amazing career. But because he was Darth Vader, he became literally the voice of the boogeyman for a generation. The boogeyman might have been Michael Myers in the Halloween series, but he never spoke.
Right.
Darth Vader was the boogeyman for those first 3 films, and his voice really helped create an absolutely indelible impression on the culture that's just,
Yeah.
I wasn't really thinking about it till we started talking about it, but my goodness, who doesn't know who Darth Vader? Even people who've never seen Star Wars know who Darth Vader is,
Yeah.
and they know his voice.
Yep.
Yes, it's a combination of factors, but let me ask you this to turn it back around, right? Because I know I'm rambling a little bit here, but do you think Vader becomes as indelible a character without James Earl Jones? Bob Anderson's in the suit. There's a random ILM guy that was in the suit at one point for pickup shots in Return of the Jedi. There's Dave Prowse, obviously, was in the suit. And you got James Earl Jones. Does any of that work without James Earl Jones?
I mean, I think it is a question, that fans have thought about for a long time, especially with, the complaints that we'd heard from somebody like Dave Prowse and him feeling as though he was pushed aside. I think that in some ways, it's interesting because the whole characterization of Darth Vader is very akin to what we have now with The Mandalorian, where they're very open about the fact that it is portrayed by different people, and Pedro Pascal is the voice. And then, of course, there are scenes when he is there. Other times he's not, right? He's just the voice. And I do think that it's incredible because I don't think Darth Vader would be the same without that iconic, booming, lustrous, bassy voice that you get with James Earl Jones. And I think that voice acting itself, in many ways, kind of goes to show just how important a voice is to a character. I mean, I think we've all experienced that as we've transitioned from Ashley Eckstein being Ahsoka and bringing that character life and her feeling alive in our minds for all those years, to now having Rosario Dawson play the character in live action, and voice makes characters. And I think of that too, because as you were talking about the fact that he's the boogeyman for one generation, he's the father figure for a whole other generation with The Lion King.
Oh my gosh.
In a completely different role, which it just goes to show the incredible range that his voice had, that he could do both.
I love that you mentioned Mufasa, because that, I think, is one of those things that gets overlooked because of the Vader thing for those of us who are older. I forget about Mufasa until somebody mentions Mufasa, and then I go, oh, yeah, of course. And I think you're absolutely right, because it's that same voice, but with just a little bit different inflection. It goes from menacing to wanting to hug. When I hear James Earl Jones as Mufasa, I feel safe, I feel loved, I feel warm. And it's the same voice of the guy who cuts off his own son's hand and is trying to turn him into evil. Additionally, there's a whole other facet, because even as indelible as his voice is, when he appeared on screen as just an everyman character, you mentioned Field of Dreams. I'd argue even Admiral Greer, a career military guy. When he would appear as a person that wasn't some larger than life mythological figure, his voice had a different quality about it. But all three methods of delivery were equally valid and equally memorable. You mentioned your first run across with him outside of Vader would have been Hunt for Red October. My first run across with him outside of the Vader persona was Conan the Barbarian as Thulsa Doom.
Oh my gosh, yeah.
That's another villain.
Mm-hmm.
That's a hard. When I was a kid and I finally saw Conan the Barbarian, that was a tough one for me to get my head around because I was sitting there looking at it saying, "That's Darth Vader? What?"
Yeah.
Like it was really it was challenging and weird to see him as that cult leader. Totally different type of villainy, but he totally inhabited that character as well.
Yeah.
It's stunning because of the fact that it's easy to be dismissive of a voice actor, but I would say that Darth Vader is the one that you point to and you say, and you know what? I want to throw this out there at you too. I think one of the challenges that was faced in the prequel trilogy, even though they did not realize it at the time, was that dialogue spoken by James Earl Jones, and keeping in mind that we're both prequel loving fans, the delivery is a little bit less corny when it comes from James Earl Jones. I've always argued that if you listen to the dialogue in the prequels, it matches Vader. Vader's dialogue matches the era that his character comes from, basically. When James Earl Jones says something, it hits differently. And I want to ask you, do you think that that was an unintentional hurdle that the prequels faced, was that there was nobody delivering the dialogue like Vader to make the general audience take it more seriously or give it as much gravitas?
That is an interesting question. And part of that is, Star Wars itself being, and especially the prequels, really kind of based around the Arthurian type of legends, the courtly nature, especially at that time period and everything. And I could totally see how that is the case. And I think what's interesting is you say that, the people who were best at delivering that were, Ewan McGregor found a way to be able to do it, even though he was a younger actor at that point. And of course, you had Neeson, who is phenomenal at it, because Lem just does whatever you give him. And I think, we've talked about, there was a different generation of actor for the prequels, for the most part, than there was for the original trilogy. And those that really were able to sink their teeth into that, a lot of them came from the previous generation of actor and really made it work. McDermott is an excellent example of being able to do that, is the Emperor Palpatine. So I think you do have a point in that, because there is a way to deliver that dialogue, even as a younger actor. And again, Ewan McGregor found the way to be able to do it because he was almost able to just tap into the serial mindset of how to deliver that dialogue, And so, no, I think there is something that can be missing without somebody like a James Earl Jones to do that. And the beauty of him too as a person and a character is and an actor, voice actor, was just the way in which, he did all sorts of things, from television to movies to voice acting. The guy was incredibly versatile. And yet at the same time, I think one of the things that I came across with him is those places where he was able to play, I think, the type of character that was more in line, it seemed, with his personality. When it came to like a Field of Dreams type of Mufasa, this incredibly kind, warm, loving person. I mean, I even think of like the Sandlot, where it's like he's the villain at the beginning, but by the end he's the lovable
Yeah.
neighbor. You know, like all of these things, right? And so, I mean, and like even said, even Admiral Greer, right? You know, the guy who's behind Jack Ryan the whole time, and loves him, believes in him, was there in, and I think that's just the feeling you get about who he was as a human being. And I almost wonder if a big part of that had to do with his own struggles early in life, and realizing that, you know, every moment is a gift and everybody is at a place in their life, no matter, and who knows what they're struggling with. And he just seemed to be an incredibly genuine, kind, wonderful person. And the beauty is he could channel all of that and play absolute evil in Darth Vader in the original trilogy, and absolute, you know, the type of father figure you wish you had in The Lion King. I mean, that's just the kind of person that we had here in Star Wars. And I think I'm incredibly grateful to him for allowing them to then be able to continue as they use Darth Vader and voice, that he's allowed for technology for that character to continue with his voice, not somebody trying to mimic him, but with his voice and technology to make that work. You know, and I think we saw the way that works in, you know, the Obi-Wan Kenobi show, and in Rogue One. And honestly, you know, the technology was even better by Obi-Wan Kenobi. I almost wish they had gone back and re-edited Rogue One for at least the digital release, because it felt like him.
Yeah.
You know?
With Kenobi, because he recorded for Rogue One. I believe I don't know if he recorded for Kenobi, but the processing is the key, because the processing of his voice in the original Star Wars was different than the processing anytime after. Like if you actually listen closely in Star Wars Empire and Jedi, the way they process his voice changed and evolved, just the same way that Vader's costume would change and evolved through each production. And it's actually one of the things that drives me nuts about the line that they stole from an outtake in Star Wars and put into Empire Strikes Back, is I'm like, that doesn't sound like the right mix.
Bring my shuttle.
Changing bring my shuttle to inform my Star Destroyer to prepare for my arrival. I'm like, that doesn't sound right. It's a weird thing. I know, what a hill to die on, but yeah. Anyway, that's the thing that's toughest for me, is with a lot of the digital technology, I stand on the side of saying, you know, we've recast stuff before. We've allowed for different actors to step. Alden Ehrenreich becomes Han Solo. When somebody did that thing where they mapped Harrison Ford over him as, you know, oh, look, it looks like young Harrison Ford. I considered that so disrespectful. Give different actors the opportunity to play the roles. We didn't do that with Donald Glover. We're fine with that. Maggie Gyllenhaal slides into the Dark Knight. No problem. It still feels like it would be a sacrilege to if they had Vader come in at any point, to have anybody but Jones's voice there.
Yeah.
Isn't that the weirdest thing? That, like, that's the one where even I would be like, no, let's go ahead and use the digital technology to do it.
Well, and it's interesting too, because you know, we've all I think had instances. I think in the video games that he's not, you know, James Earl Jones, and there's a difference there. I think of even the way in which the Clone Wars, of course, used Ian Abercrombie as Palpatine instead of using McDermott. I think part of that was probably cost at that point, and of course they have utilized him in, you know, the Bad Batch. I think they even in Rebels they used him at the very end there, and part of that too is Abercrombie had passed away. But yeah, I think that This is one of those places where I am with you in the sense that, technology and the fact that Jones himself was in favor of allowing them to be able to do this makes me completely okay with it anytime Darth Vader wants to show up on screen, that there is a piece of him that still exists, because everything that they create is based on his voice, and it is based on him, and that's the only way they can do this process, is because of the vast library they have of his voice. I in some ways it's almost like, even though he's gone, he'll never truly be gone from us. And there is something a little bit special about that. And mainly part of that is what we kind of talked about at the very beginning. The fact of James Earl Jones being such a big part of the presence of Darth Vader, but simply through his voice. Mm-hmm. And that's fun that will live on for us.
As painful as it might be to say, Bob Anderson, Dave Prowse, the people that, forgive me for not knowing the actor's name off the top of my head, but the actor in the suit for Rogue One, especially in the scene where he goes down the Murder Express hallway, looked and moved just like Darth Vader. Without saying a word, I was like, okay, that's Darth Vader. I accepted it. But the voice, it's gotta be him. So to wrap up, as we're coming to the end here, what I want to do is I want to issue a special challenge for you. I know that we didn't prepare for this question in specific, but if you were to pick a James Earl Jones performance that's not Darth Vader, first one that pops in your mind is?
It's Admiral Greer for me. And part of that is, having seen Hunt for October many, many times. And then, of course, the other two films that he also did, Patriot Games and Clear and Present Danger, where he played the same character. But really, it came down to that. And then, of course, second really is, for me, is The Lion King. So what about you?
I honestly, it would be Conan the Barbarian, not because it's my favorite, but because it was the first time where it was a formative moment in my youth where I suddenly started to understand artifice in a different way. Sort of the way that when I saw Harrison Ford as Indiana Jones kiss Marion, and my little kid brain is like, wait, no, he should be kissing Princess Leia. And then having that moment to go, oh, right, it's all pretend.
Right.
I think that his performance as Thulsa Doom was very therapeutically and developmentally important for me, because I was able to say, oh, right, acting. And as weird as that is, it seems like it's less special, but I think that's actually a very important thing. It's like finding out when certain things aren't necessarily truth as you grow up, like who your father really is, right, Luke? Nudge, nudge. But then, of course, Mufasa after that. So, I love reminiscing. I wish we didn't have to reminisce about
me too.
somebody. It always hurts a little bit. And when, as you get older and the stars that you adored growing up start going, you can't help but feel the march of time yourself. But at the same time, you know what? I'm going to be the old man here. I'm grateful that we had somebody as awesome as James Earl Jones to grow up with, because quite frankly, he made more of a positive impression on me than a lot of the stars of today will make on the youth of today. That's it. Fine. I know I'm old man yelling at cloud with that one, but Matt, if people want to see you yelling at clouds online, where can they find you?
Well, like you, John, I'm definitely getting to that point in my life. And you can see that on social media under the name MattRushing02. You can also find me here on the network on a completed show called Owl Post with Dre Kaufman, as we talked about every single chapter of the Harry Potter series. And then over on the TFM network, you can find me doing a bunch of shows like the 602 Club and so many others talking about Star Trek, 602 Club, though, is where we talk about everything outside of Star Trek that we love, and John's a frequent guest over there, so please check that out. But John, if people want to catch up with you, maybe, heck, they want to share their favorite memories of James Earl Jones, where could they find you?
Well, you can contribute to my 2024 presidential campaign by finding me out there on social media as Kessel Junkie, KESSELJUNKIE. I can tell you that I'm the most honest candidate that you will encounter.
Well, I heard you were the clear winner at the debate, so.
I'm the clear winner everywhere, every day, and I'm the only one that you should be voting for. Trust me, because I'll always deal straight with everybody. And you can also find me here on a show on the Nerd Party Network called House Lights that I co-host with Darren Moser and Tristan Riddell, where we talk about the works of directors. We have a great time there. But Jedi Master Rushing, I think it's time to light the beacon so that we can appreciate again James Earl Jones. So I think it's time to close these negotiations.
John, negotiations are closed.
Join the revolution. Join the Nerd Party.